Jake here for American Trucks, and in this video we're taking a look at the Form Lighting Sequential LED projector headlights with black housings and clear lenses fitting 2019 and newer Ram 1500s, excluding limited, Longhorn, and TRX models. If you're tired of poor visibility or maybe just how your headlights look, these are an excellent way to bring some updated styling and vastly improved lighting performance to your Ram. They pack a lot of cool features and some serious firepower into an almost OEM type package, making for a really easy and complete update to your truck. Easily the most obvious feature here has to be the triple projectors. Now all three of these are bi-LED units and serve as both your high and low beams, making for some serious light output. Without a doubt, these are going to put the factory halogen lights on a Ram to shame. They offer a really clean, bright light and sharp cutoff with high intensity and a much wider beam pattern. All that to say, you're going to be able to see much more of the road or trail much more clearly than you would with factory lights. Now surrounding those projectors are some LED strips. The two closest to the projectors serve as your daytime running lights, illuminating in a cool temperature white. Now on the bottom, you get a separate strip that's going to illuminate amber and will function as your turn signal. Now those turn signals are also sequential, which I think is just cool. And they have a nice sweep action to them, making for a modern interpretation of that classic sequential turn signal sequence. Now the LED strips also have another trick up their sleeve, and that is a startup sequence. So these are going to perform a cool two-stage chasing sequence that just adds that little extra something to your build. Now I've said this about other lights that do a similar type of sequence, but it makes me think of Kit from Knight Rider. And if you're old enough or old enough at heart to get that reference, make sure you grab a few aspirin before you install these. That notwithstanding though, another thing that's worth noting here are that these are DOT, SAE, and FMVSS 108 compliant, meaning that they are fully street legal. Combine all of that with the black internal housing and the clear lenses, and not only do you get a clean, slick look, but something that's gonna vastly outperform what you had on your truck. It's gonna look more aggressive, and it's gonna be fully street legal too. Now I think these work really well with the factory styling on the truck, and they look like they could have come right off the showroom floor, which is just another added benefit. So if you like that OEM plus type of look, if that's what you're going for with your build, these are really gonna fit the bill nicely. Construction here is also first rate and mimics your factory setup. You get OE quality polypropylene for the housing, plus the standard polycarbonate over top for the lenses. Now all the LEDs are automotive grade emitters with breather vents as well, so it should keep them cool, and you've got an external heat sink on the bottom there as well. So all that should extend their already long life even further. Now like we discussed a few minutes ago, these are again fully DOT, SAE, and FMV 108 SS compliant, again making them fully street legal, provided however you have them aimed properly, which you can easily do thanks to the integrated adjusters on the back. Now everything here is plug and play as well, making for an easy installation, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. First, however, let's talk about the price. Now pricing for this set, as you see them here, comes in at just about $1,100. Now it's not what you'd call inexpensive, but you do get a lot for your money here, and these are gonna undercut some other options in the category by a pretty solid margin. So I think these represent a rather good value, and they function just like a factory light with some added output. Plus, if you like the style here, this is gonna be a great setup for your truck. Installation is going to get a 1 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and it should take you about an hour to complete. Like I mentioned earlier, these are a total plug and play install, and everything comes pretty much ready to go for you right out of the box. You've got a few adapters that you need to plug in, one little wiring harness that's already got an inline fuse tap ready to go. You just plug it into your fuse box, plug the other ends into the lights, and you're set. So this is really just a matter of taking out your old lights, swapping these into place, and plugging some stuff in. And to show you what's involved now, let's head on out to the install bay.
Tools required for this install include a ratchet, needle nose pliers, scissors or diagonal cutters, 10mm ratcheting wrench, a T25 torque socket, 8 and 10mm sockets, and a few zip ties. What's up guys? Today we're installing a set of headlights on our Ram. First we're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory headlights, and I'll meet you right back here for the install.
So for this install, you're going to need to pop your hood, remove your upper rad cover, the grill, and some of the surrounding trim. It's a pretty simple process. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. So let's get started. So we're going to start by removing our upper rad cover. There's a bunch of plastic clips that need to be removed. So I'm going to use my plastic clip removal tool and pop the heads of them open. And then once I get those all removed, I can pull the panel off. and we're gonna pull this panel right off. The next piece we need to remove is the headlight trim and grille trim here on the top of the vehicle. It's a combination of a pop clip and 10mm screws. So I'm gonna use my clip tool once again and a 10mm socket to pull all of these out, and then I can just remove this piece from the vehicle. Next, I'm gonna use my 8mm socket to remove some of the screws here on the inner wheel well and pull the liner back to expose a little bit more hardware that's hiding behind the liner so I can get this panel off that surrounds the headlight. So now that I have the liner pulled back, I've exposed this 10mm bolt here inside the wheel well liner, and I'm going to use my 10mm on a ratchet and just pull that out. Now I'll just repeat this process on the other side. Next, I'm going to need to remove my grill. There are 3 10mm bolts at the bottom of either side of the grill, and there are 4 across the top. I'll just use my 10mm socket on my small impact gun, remove all of those screws, and pull the grill off. So now that I have my grill removed, I can go ahead and start unbolting and unhooking my headlights. I have a clip here at the top as well as a 10mm bolt, and then I have a 10mm bolt here on the side from the fender, and I'll just use my 10mm socket and my clip tool and pull those out, and then I can unhook my headlights. It's a little hard to see, but I'm just gonna unplug my headlight connectors from the back. Just push down on the tabs to release them, and then you can pull the headlight out.
So before we install our new headlights, we're gonna start out with our wiring. I've got our harness kind of laid across the engine bay where it's gonna go. We have the connector on our long wire that's going over to the passenger side headlight bucket. The connector on our short wire is going to the driver's side bucket, and then we have our fuse tap that's gonna be going into our fuse box. So the first thing we're gonna do is go to our fuse box. We're gonna push in on these 2 tabs to release our cover. And then we're gonna be looking for our F38 fuse, which is this 10 amp right here. So we'll grab a pair of needle nose pliers to pull that out. And then we'll grab our fuse top, install that 10 amp fuse into the open spot, and then slide this into where we pulled that fuse out of. And now we can put our cover back on. And then if we follow our wire, we have that short connector, which we can just run down into our headlight bucket. Next, we can run our longer wire over to our passenger side headlight bucket. So I'm just gonna feed that through here. And then we have this harness here for our horns that we can zip tie it to. So we'll grab a zip tie, throw that on. And then you can grab a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters to cut off the excess of the zip tie. And now we can run this into our passenger side headlight bucket. And then we have a nice hole right here that we can run our zip tie through. And then same thing, scissors or diagonal cutters, cut off that excess. Now before we start installing our new headlights, we're gonna have to transfer over this lower bracket from our stock one to our new one. It's held in by 5 T25 Torx bolts, so we'll grab a T25 Torx socket to get those out and transfer it over. So now we can take our Torx socket and start on the bottom, removing those 3 bolts. And then we can spin this around and get the first one on one side. And then spin it around again to get our last one. And then with everything removed, this will just lift right off and we can get it onto the new one. So now we can line up these 2 slots with the 2 tabs on our headlight and slide our cover on. And then we can begin to reinstall our bolts. And then we can spin it around to get the ones on the side. And then we'll do that same thing for the other headlight. So now we're ready to install our new headlight. Now we're gonna be using this main connector that's gonna go to the bigger connector on our body harness. We're not gonna be using the side marker connector, and we're also not gonna be using this gray connector. The smaller black connector is what's gonna go into the wire that we ran earlier for our fuse tab. And then once we have those in place, we can slide in our headlight. Now we can go up top and reinstall our first bolt. And then we can take a 10mm socket and tighten it down. And now we can come to the side of our headlight and reinstall our second bolt. And take our 10mm socket to tighten it down. And now you can do that same thing on the other side. Now we're ready to reinstall our grille, so we'll line it up and press it into place. Next we can reinstall our upper trim. Next we can reinstall our 2 upper grille bolts on this side, as well as the 6 bolts for our trim piece. And then we'll tighten all of these down with a 10mm socket and do the same thing on the other side. Next, we can reinstall our radiator cover. And then we can reinstall all of our push clips. And now you will also have one at the top here on each side. However, we are missing a couple, so we don't have those two. Next, we can reinstall our 3 lower grill bolts on each side. Now the shorter one is gonna go on the outside here. And then our 2 longer ones are gonna go towards the inside. And then we'll grab a 10mm socket and tighten these down. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. And now we can reinstall our cover. Next, we can reinstall the bolts holding in this little trim piece. The first one we have is the difficult one that's gonna sit right about here. It's gonna be really hard to see with my hand in there. We'll get that threaded in as far as we can by hand. And then we can grab a 10mm ratcheting wrench to finish this off. And then we can slide our fender liner back into place. And then we'll reinstall those 3 8mm bolts that we removed. Then we'll take an 8mm socket and tighten these down. And then you can do that same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Form Lighting Sequential LED projector headlights with black housing and clear lens for your 2019 and newer Ram 1500, excluding Limited, Longhorn, and TRX. Thank you for watching, and for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.